So really lucky to have Elton Boocock on the call today. Now, I've actually met Elton before today myself. Came highly recommended in the world of marketing. Now, I like to think I know a little bit about marketing myself, and I've definitely met some other people in the marketing industry who I've been less than impressed with. And I'm never had any of those on my show, and obviously I'm not going to. But so I had a little bit of a risk there, and I was a little bit concerned, but I shouldn't have been. Elton clearly knows his stuff, some real insights here, and I think you'll get a lot of value. Anybody that's interested in marketing, that's doing digital marketing, or needs to attract people to their business, particularly if it's a web-based business or web element of your business is important to you, then I think you're going to get a lot of value out of this interview. Okay, that's it from me. Let's dive in. So I am privileged and very pleased to have Mr. Elton Boocock on the line with us today. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So I know we haven't met before, so it's actually our first time, but we were just talking a little bit before we sort of joined this meeting, or before we went live, about a portal that you created in the past, UK trucking portal. Just tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll just explain how that kind of led you into the world of marketing and what you're up to now.
Yeah, sure. So sort of the run up to it is I'd been running a digital marketing agency. Now, back then we never called it a digital marketing agency, but I'd been doing this digital stuff in 1997. So that, to give it some sort of time context, was the year before Google got their funding. So a couple of years before Google started. And what that meant back then was building websites and optimizing them for things like AOL.com and so on. So it was way before there were lots of search engines, but way before Google as we know it now, So
like real early days stuff, right?
Really early. Yeah. So it was good. It was a good time, but I got to the point by 2000, so sort of 3 years in, it was just I was building all this stuff for other people and not for myself. So it was a classic story of, we were selling shovels to the gold miners, but wondering where they were going and what were they doing. And that seemed like the exciting thing. And here we were just on the road to the gold mines selling the shovels. And so
everyone says that's a smart thing to do, though. Everyone says that's the right thing to do, right?
And you know what? It's 100% the smart thing to do. Be the accountant, be the lawyer. Don't be the person in trouble. Don't be the person who needs their books doing. So, so it's the smart thing, 100%. And my story just tells that, And so 3 years in, I got a little bit sort of frustrated that I wasn't one of the gold miners. I was selling the shovels, and I went back to an industry I knew. All of my family are from a logistics background. And so I had a lot of sort of contacts in that sector, a lot of experience growing up in it. So I set up a portal called uktrucking.net. So it was all about transport. At the time, we were bringing in things like driver's hours. There's a lot of legislation changes. So there's a lot of sort of new stuff going on in the industry. But of course, it's still very early for those types of industries when we look at the internet. They weren't IT, that's for sure. So
I suppose you was having to build all this bespoke, custom. These are all custom solutions you had to create.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, 100%. Wow. So everything's hard. Everything is at that point hand coded. So it's but that's what we were doing. So I wasn't scared of that. We were developing this stuff for corporates anyway. But we launched the site. And it had 5 million views per month. Now, back in the day, people still do, but less so. Back in the day, people refer to hits. And hits on a website is every file that you've pulled. So if you've got 10 images on a web page, that's 11 hits. Whereas we had 5 million views. So actual pairs of eyes looking at this stuff. And it ticked every marketing box. We were being quoted by all the big brands. Our advertisers were all the big brands. And everybody wanted a piece of this portal. It was huge and big news in the sector. And yet 3 years in, I remember it, and like every time I talk about it, even now, it's sort of a vivid memory, because I had this massive tax bill is what happened, and yet no money in the bank. And I'm thinking, well, hold on, how can that happen? You know, how can you end up with a big tax bill, but there's no money in the bank? And when I say no money in the bank, that was between both businesses. So the original digital marketing agency and the portal. And what had really happened is it had this massive marketing success, but it had been propped up financially from the marketing agency. In its own right, it had just lost £250,000. And that's in 2003. You know, and I'm just a guy running a small digital marketing agency and a small, albeit very popular, portal. And so the good news...
just let me examine that a little bit. So, how do you, when you say it was propped up, just explain that a little bit more.
So essentially, we got one business, the marketing agency, making a lot of profit, and then just spending that profit back on the business that was failing. So of course, it hides what's really going on. Until you suddenly get a tax bill on your very profitable company and you think, hold on, I've got no money to pay the tax bill. What's going on? So that really sort of shook me, I suppose, because I'd been doing marketing, been very successful at marketing, and now I'd got this portal that relied heavily on marketing, and guess what? I'm being really successful in marketing. Everybody loves it. It's got 5 million views, all the tick boxes. And yet, I've just lost 250,000. And I'm thinking, well, how's that even possible?
Yeah. Crazy.
Because if you get your marketing right, surely everything else comes off the back of it. How is it even possible that you can do this? And so that led me into a whole load of questioning myself, questioning marketing. You can imagine, you know. And so, but when I look back, of course, it's fairly obvious, but it just wasn't at the time. You know, when I look back, there was no real business strategy. I didn't know what the different marketing activities were doing, other than this naive view that everything you do marketing-wise, it's all about generating business. Well, yes, sort of, but there's just different levels to it. And I think now, I mean, when I talk about my 5 questions. They actually all came really from that moment when I realised everything had gone wrong on my portal because I'd got marketing so right by standard marketing terms, but actually it's so wrong. And
this is true of a lot of things, right? I mean, look, we're all under huge sort of time pressures, and we've all got a million things to sort of learn. And whilst we try to read past the headlines and get into the nuts of it, we have to sort of divvy up our time and resources accordingly. And so I totally can understand where that bit's handled, right? With the marketing bit's doing well, you focus your attention somewhere else. You look back and go, "What the holy hell?" And we all do that, and at times, sometimes it's a big wake up call like that, which is a big one, a nasty one. Sometimes it's a bit smaller, but I'd always feel that we only get these sort of real learnings, these valuable learnings, they only come the hard way. And if you can read it in a book, which is great, but it's never quite the same as living it yourself, right? I mean, I guess you learned a lot during that time.
Do you know, people now, they just think I'm being I suppose
paranoid or
no,
okay.
The opposite. They hear me talk now, and I say it was the best £250,000 I ever spent, and they think, oh, he's just being philosophical. You can't really think that. Actually, yes, yeah, because look, I could have gone off to the most expensive business school. I could have bought the most expensive courses. I could have had every book on the subject. But no way would I have ever learned what I learned that day, because it was literally a day when I had the big wake-up call. I mean, clearly I'd been making that day happen for 3 years, but it was one particular day, and as I say, I visualise it now. I could be back in that room when you wake up. And but I couldn't have ever learned any of that without going through it. And it makes what I do now. So if I look at whether I lost money, well, in the years since, actually, I probably gained money from the 250,000 because it shaped everything I've done since. So,
and I guess you can only lose money for that experience if you call it a day, right? If you hang up your boots and go, okay, I'm beaten, I'm going to become a gardener or something,
Right.
And So that's the way to bounce back, is to make that painful experience, get the learning, build something better, in the future. And like you say, you couldn't get that stuff any other way, really.
No, and it's as you say, it is about what you do with the learning. You have to look at this stuff philosophically. You have to say, well, okay, that's fine, but what am I going to learn from it? What am I going to take from it? How am I going to make things better? And that can be the difficult thing. It's easy for me to talk about it now, sort of 15, 17 years since, or whenever 17 years ago. So it's easy to talk about it now. Of course, 17 years ago, you're full of sort of shame, embarrassment, all of these emotions that you think you're a failure and, all that stuff. So if people are sort of listening and they think, well, that sounds really good for you to say that, but I don't feel like that. Last year I did something similar and, well, yeah, that is true. At that moment in time,
it's pretty painful.
It's painful, but it's what you decide to do with the pain.
Yeah, I think it's a good lesson. I mean, I haven't had that, and I hope it's not coming away. I'll do anything to avoid it, but, it's possible these events can happen.
Yeah.
I have had, some, situations that haven't gone well, and I can relate to the idea, you're talking about, just doing on paper, our marketing's doing really well. And I remember a time when the business was growing, well, getting lots of new customers in. And, I thought that was what it was meant to do. And we got to a point where we just couldn't cope with the demand. And that doesn't sound like a biggie. Well, you just drop back a little bit. No, I just said yes to certain orders.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't fulfill on all of those orders. And we were basically delivering a poorer service with the orders we did have. And then not be able to fulfill them all in time, and it really went badly really quickly. That was a very, very painful time for me personally, and I went through all the things you're talking about emotionally there, and kind of got scarred by that. And I think those scars are still kind of with me, but hopefully some of those learnings are with me as well.
I think that's the key. The scars don't go away, but it's what you do with them, and it's probably a good thing that the scars don't go away. If we look at bad things in history, we look back and we think we don't want to repeat that because it was bad. If we forget what happened, well, then we're going to repeat it.
So all that said, I want to save 250k. So tell us, what is the learnings for you? Yeah.
Okay, so for me, it turned out that it was a lot more about not the activities you do, but how they're tied to your business strategy and understanding the key numbers. So, broad statement, and it's not 100% factual, but broad statement, marketers are typically more creative. So marketers come from, let's say, our graphic design or copywriters and so on. And we tend to be more creative in what we're doing rather than financial. Marketers are not typically the bean counters. And in fact, we refer to them as bean counters. It's slightly derogatory in one sense, because that's not us, But actually, what I really understood is that marketing is all about counting beans, because it's not about the nice creative that you get in the magazine or the really nice website you build. All of that means nothing if it ends up losing you 250,000. Now, of course, I'm coming from a guy who, you can probably see behind, I'm in my studio right now. I'm a creative guy, whether I'm video editing or whether I'm doing
music. You see the music studio behind you there. You're into your drums.
Yeah, and exactly. I'm a creative guy.
Yeah.
But all of that amounts to nothing if I don't get the numbers right. And marketing is about increasing business. It's not about increasing awareness. It's about increasing business. Because if I asked a business owner, which one would you choose? Everybody in the world knows about you and your product, but you're in debt and no way of getting out of debt. Or 10 people know about you and your product, but you've got plenty of profit and you're doing good with that profit. Well, I know which answer they'd go for. So therefore, marketing can't be about generating awareness.
That's a really great question, because honestly, I think there would be people, if they did answer it honestly, I'm not sure they would, they do want the adulation, the attention. And I'm not, I've been guilty of that too, right?
Absolutely.
I think that's very, very true.
but it's that piece. What they want is they want both. And I suppose it's getting real crystal clear that sometimes you can't have both. Sometimes you can. It's not that they exist in different spaces. You can have both. But if you have to prioritize one or the other, which one would you prioritize? And I think that's the key. So
that's a really great point. I'm sorry to interject.
Yeah.
It's a kind of simple question, but actually, in fact, I'd actually urge everyone to ask themselves that honestly, because I have also, and of course I'm not going to mention any names, know of people that are incredibly guilty of that. And I think perhaps all of us can be guilty of that. I think I have been guilty of that as well. I know of some people that have been doing radio shows, for example, for years, but not getting any customers on the back of it. But it sounds great because they're doing a radio show, and for them, all the payback is kind of social, and that's fine if you know it and accept that. But then, of course, fast forward a few months, and they're kind of whinging that they've got no customers. Well, we all told you that.
So then it comes back to this. So, and the first question, I said I've got these 5 questions. The first one is about how does your digital marketing align to your business strategy and your sales process? Now, that's about getting really clear on what is it you want. And if what you want from doing a radio show is for people to get to know your name, then that's fine. Nobody should be saying a business is all about making lots of profit. No, a business is whatever you want it to do. It's just a vehicle for something that you want to achieve. And typically that's about making money, but it doesn't mean it has to be. It's just that's typically how we understand it. So if your intention is to create awareness, fame, whatever it happens to be, then it's absolutely fine for that to be your outcome, and that's what you measure. But if your intention is to create additional sales, you have to measure everything against additional sales, not fame and anything like that. So it is about getting that business strategy right and tying it together. Now the 5 questions they almost like jump across the top. There's different levels to them, because even the first question, it assumes you've got a business strategy. So the first question you've got to say is actually, have I got a business strategy? And if I've got one, does everybody know what it is? You wouldn't send people out into the fields to pick strawberries, but not tell them the idea was to pick strawberries. You wouldn't just say, guys, could you go and hang out in the field? You'd let them know, guys, this is how we pick them. These are the ones we pick. And that's exactly what we want you to do. There'd be some detail on that strategy. And they would know if they came back with baskets empty, that didn't quite fulfill the strategy. And if they came back with baskets full, that did fulfill the strategy. And I wonder how many people, let's say you believe that you've got your business strategy nailed, and that's great. You know what the sales process is, and you know that your digital marketing is aligned to it. But I wonder if the people who are actually carrying out your social media posts or your search engine optimization, do they know what it is? So without any of your prompting, could they tell you what your business strategy is?
Yeah, and it's so easy to assume that, and it sometimes comes back and you go, oh my God, they're 180 degrees away. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, even with all of that, let's say you've got your business strategy, you've got the sales process, that's all fine, you've tied it. But the next thing is people, they just carry out activities and they've got no sort of concern for whether those activities are about generating awareness or direct sales. That was the other thing I found. Go back to the portal, we were just interested in making sure everybody clicked onto our website, did something on our website. But we never looked at whether that was only ever going to generate awareness or only ever generate direct sales, as it were. And actually, what did each one mean? Because most people say they want sales. Okay, well then you would never do any awareness type marketing. But of course, the awareness stuff backs up the sales. And understanding
Because I always
that
think
sort of
this
mix.
is, it's a really hard thing to measure. I mean, it always sounds quite easy on the surface of it, right? But this is why perhaps, there's definitely some learning for me to have here. But I think I'm about to go into this. I have it myself. I might do a show like this, or I might do a blog post or something, and maybe I'll even do an ad on the back of that and boost some sort of viewership of that. But to try and correlate, okay, 3,000 viewed that blog this week, what's that going to relate to hard income? That's hard to measure, and it's quite easy to reach a conclusion. Well, actually, it didn't, it wasn't any hard core benefit, because sometimes that benefit can be 5 months down the road,
Right.
in which case it's very hard to measure that. So how do you go about doing that?
Right. Okay. So first thing is understanding. So there's two parts, and I'll come on to the measurement bit secondly, but because that kind of follows part one, which is understanding what your business needs in terms of marketing. So let me explain. If you sell, let's say you sell Christmas trees, there's no point you trying to generate direct sales in January, February, March. Too late, you've missed it, So in December, a lot of your activities are going to be call to action. We want the sale now. Now's when we sell trees. But in terms of, let's say you're a lawyer, well, that's not quite the call to action. I need to build up a lot of credibility with you. I need you to understand I'm trustworthy, I'm good at what I do. So professional services need a whole load of brand awareness activities before somebody will click on buy now. And when I say buy now, of course that could be inquire, it's whatever, it's download my ebook, it's all of these different things, but a call to action. So first off, it's understanding where you fit in terms of your mix. Should it be 80-20 towards just generating awareness? And that's all good, because when I generate awareness, it's from that pool that people will then buy. Or is it just about direct sales? Nobody cares about the brand name. Nobody cares about who I am. What I sell is purely a commodity. They will come on at the last minute and they will buy. So an emergency plumber, if you're sat there with your thumb in the pipe, as it were, stopping the leak, you're not looking round, and you don't need to spend the 7 touch points marketers would talk about, or the 7 minutes or 7 hours, or nowadays probably 7 weeks. You're really not interested in that. You don't need to build that up. All you've got to do is be available. So all of your activities would be around making sure you're available and you've got somewhere very quick to call now. So that's 80-20 on direct sales, as it were. Maybe 20%, which is for stuff like testimonials and all that nice stuff around it. But if you're on something that's a more personal service, so let's say your financial advisors or your legal advisors and so on, you really want to understand that person first before you work with them. Some marketers are the same. We do a lot of stuff, YouTube channel, all that usual stuff that you would expect. Why do we do that? Well, because people want to come and see you and get a feel for whether they can work with you. And there's a far wider and sometimes far longer buying cycle involved. So first it's understanding, well, what amount should I have? What should my mix look like in terms of activities? Then we start looking at, okay, well, how can I measure it? So that's about breaking down into, okay, well, when I'm just gathering awareness, I'm looking for things like engagement. Whereas if I'm looking at direct sales, engagement isn't a measure. Don't ever measure engagement if what you need is direct sales. Then you measure the money. It's as simple as that. You measure the inquiries you're getting through. So measuring there is about engagement. It's not about necessarily the reach. So how many people saw your boosted post or all of these things, because as we know, let's just take a platform like Facebook, somebody's scrolling through and all of a sudden you've counted as a reach. Well, you didn't reach me. I might not have scrolled through quite fast enough to miss the algorithm, but I didn't really engage with you. I didn't didn't even notice who you were. But engagement tells me something, so...
yeah, and all these data are very useful, but they can, particularly if it's slightly lower numbers, can gloss over reality quite a bit. Even if it's a webinar, or let's say it's a video, and you've got 100,000 views as a big round number. Okay, sounds good, excellent. But a lot of people clicked play and then went off and did dinner, or took a phone call, or had to take the baby to bed, or and never actually watched more than a second of the video and never went back to it.
100%, and that's what you've got to be careful of. And that's why you're looking at something like engagement. If it's awareness, if somebody really became aware of you, there's a good chance they engaged with you with that post. That's real awareness. Otherwise it's, as you say, it's passive at best. And that's what we've got to be so careful of. I remember when email marketing first came out, and we were building sort of CRM system type stuff, and we're like, okay, so we're going to have an email marketing aspect to it. How do we get the reporting back? So we need to know whether somebody opened the email, whether they clicked on a link, or all the usual stuff. And it's only at that point when I realised that the data lies, and it lies even today, because people who've opened an email, if you've got your email browser set to open images as default, then as far as MailChimp or any of these others are concerned, you read the email. But if you've got the images set to not open, you didn't until you say download images. Well, if I send you an email and the only image is my logo, you might read it, you might click on the link, you might convert and become a customer, but as far as the software is concerned, you never even opened the email.
Yeah.
So you've got to be so careful with some of these stats, but of course we all love a pretty graph, and therefore nobody ever wants to question that. They just want to say, we've got a really good open rate.
Well, these systems also are commercial. These are commercial organisations.
Correct.
It's their job to sell to us, and by doing that, if they can convey a picture that is going to lead me to invest more money in more adverts, they're going to do it. So there's, I mean, you'll know, right? From you do an advert, they're all directing to the same page, and Google's telling you this amount of people arrives at that page.
Right.
Facebook's telling you this amount of people arrive at the same. It's the same page. Well, how can the data be different? And they're all different.
But do you know what's worse than that? Try a Google ad. Google ads give you a different number to Google Analytics. It's the same company. Now, of course, Google bought Google Ads, basically, or they bought AdWords, so therefore they're completely different systems. But you would have thought, I think Google Ads, or AdWords as it was, came out about 2002, I think, from memory. You would have thought in 18 years they might have got their own reporting to tie up,
It's frightening. I mean, like you say, even if it's only just to make it look good, and look consistent, yeah.
Right. So, so I think it's about engagement. The awareness piece, how should we be measuring that, whether it's really working? If actual people are engaging, that's got to be the measure, So, again, don't look for the number of followers. That's easy, How many times do you get on a platform, a friend wants you to follow their page? Now, you're their friend. In fact, you like them a lot, but you've got no interest in what they do. If I've got, a friend who's a girl who happens to be into beauty and makeup, and she starts a nail bar and she's got a Facebook page, what's the value of me liking her page? It doesn't mean I don't like her.
Yeah.
Right. But to her as a business, there's absolutely no value in it other than destroying the algorithm that says most of the people who follow her page are not interested in her content. So actually it's got a damaging effect. But now we're getting technical, and I try and stay over the top.
Well, but that is a very critical, important. So yes, this is not going to be a master's class in doing Google or Facebook adverts, but just a quick summary on that point, right? We're basically utilising the power of these guys' massive computers, and we're basically saying, hey, Mr. Google, hey, Mr. Facebook, can you put this advert in front of the right people? And to a degree, well, quite a big degree, they're saying, yeah, no problem, let us work it out for you. We can guide them, particularly at the starting point, to give them a bit of a head start before they've got much data. Would you disagree with that's kind of the shape of it?
No, that's exactly what we're doing, but I also find it really worrying. So, if you were to say most other sectors, by the way, Mr. Kitchen Builder. Yeah. So, hey, Mr. Kitchen Builder, do you know what? You fit this stuff all the time. I don't. I don't know the market. I'm a really good cook, but I don't know anything about what cupboards are best and all the rest. So what I'm going to do is, here's my budget, and you just fit me a kitchen. Well, of course, he's looking to maximise his profits. So do you think you're getting the best quality kitchen for your money, or do you think you're getting a kitchen that gives him the best profits? And yet we never think about that with some of these systems. When you hand it over to, let's say, Google, Facebook, any of these companies, when you just hand over and say, use your algorithms, do we really believe those algorithms are stacked in our favour or their favour? And if we think they're stacked
perhaps I'm a bit naive here. So, maybe there's some lessons here for me. So, I like doing adverts, say with Facebook. I like doing an advert on Facebook that directs them to another location on Facebook. Facebook likes that. I like putting an advert on YouTube that directs them to another place on YouTube because YouTube likes that. I like keeping adverts on the same platforms. And then I think it does, and I could be naive here, right? And I'm totally open to learnings here. That then it tends to work in my favour because they're happy with me doing that. They give me a massively reduced fee for doing that because I'm doing what they want me to do, which is to keep people on their platform so they can keep feeding adverts and carry on selling them to them. But I can then build up, some sort of level of interactions, etc., with them.
You're doing, whether you know it or not, you're doing the smart play. What we've got to do, what we've got to do. So, okay, what do I want out of this? Forget for a second what they want. First of all, what do I want? Okay, now I'm really clear on what I want out of this. Then what is it that they want out of this? Okay, get really clear about what they want. And then say, okay, well, how do I line up these things so that actually both of us get what we want? Because if I try and go against what they want, I'm going to get nowhere. If I don't care for what I want, I'm going to get nowhere. But when I line the two up, all of a sudden, I'm going to get somewhere. And, again, although it's into the detail, the strategies that you're talking about are exactly right. Facebook don't want you to put on an ad. Yeah, you're doing good. But Facebook don't want you to put on an ad that sends somebody straight away off of their platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
They all want people staying on the platform. And if you're to try and test, let's say you want an inquiry form filled out, have a look at the difference between collecting people's data through a Facebook form or sending them off to your website to fill out a form.
It's phenomenally different.
Phenomenally different. Why? Because you're lining up the motivations that you have with the motivations they have. So, that's whether, I'm sure more by judgment than luck, but you're doing the smart play. But so many people don't.
I like to think I've done that, made mistakes there too, right? And so, yes, actually, I've got advantage of speaking to you. It's one of the benefits I get with these interviews is that, yes, I'm currently, and for a little while now, been basically keeping adverts local. And then I'm basically kind of relying on a bit of volume there till they organically go effectively from there to there. So, that's still something we're working on. But that's our current plan and current strategy. And it seems to make some sense.
Yeah. So, but I mean, talking about that whole piece on how do you measure, that then, like my third question comes exactly off the back of that. It's what KPIs do you have and what processes in place for continual improvement? And here's where Google Analytics, it can be your best friend or your worst enemy. To have a platform like Google Analytics is phenomenal. Nobody pays for Google Analytics. Well, we kind of do, but I mean directly. So nobody pays for Google Analytics, and yet all of that data is ours to use. And if it's not 100% accurate, what it certainly is it gives you a very good idea of what's happening. We can talk technically how you need JavaScript to nail all this sort of stuff, but actually No, it's very accurate, or not very accurate. It's accurate enough to give us meaningful information to
Enough to
make
guide
changes.
us, right? So we can make sensible, educated decisions based on that data.
Yeah. So what happens is we as business owners then spend hours and hours digging into the detail of it all. And by the time we've finished that, we're then too tired to make any sensible decisions. So we don't. So, and I would run seminars, and I'd be saying to people, how many of you have something like Google Analytics on your website? And all these hands would go up, and all these smiles would appear because they're thinking, yeah, we're doing it right. I said, okay, how many of you actually looked at what was in your Google Analytics within the last 4 weeks? And then suddenly, probably about 2/3 of the hands went down. But now the third that had kept their hand up are feeling really smug, and all of a sudden they're thinking, I told you we were doing it right. And I said, okay, now keep your hand up if you're able to tell me what action you did as a result of what you saw. And in a lot of those rooms, pretty much all the hands went down.
Yeah.
Very rarely did I, and I would say, so to all of you guys that were in the middle group, you've got Google Analytics and you've had a look at them. Why did you waste your time? Of what value was that to you? So now you know what happened in the rear view mirror. That's great. Or let's say you're driving along in the car and you realise the oil light is on. So that's good. At least you know the oil light's on. But you never pulled over.
What do you think the reason for that is? Because it definitely happens, and I'm definitely guilty of that too. So,
why? Because I think there's a couple of things. One, I don't think people know what to do, and two, I think we get data fatigue.
Well, I was about to say it's just bewildering. I mean, it's just so much of it. It's data on its own is actually irrelevant. We have to then make conclusions based on it, and that is also fundamentally dangerous. We can easily get that wrong, and I think that's a part of the piece as well. It's bewildering. We know we got to come up with a conclusion, but that conclusion is not guaranteed to be correct. It could be other influences. Yeah, sorry.
So all we've got to do is have a process in place for making those improvements. And you'll hear things like...
And testing them, I guess.
Right, that's what I was going to say. You'll hear things like A/B testing and so on. So wherever we are is the benchmark. It's as good as we've currently got. So what's stopping us trying something, and if it goes the wrong way, pulling it back? And then if it goes the right way, saying, okay, well, that's now our benchmark. We try something else. If it goes backwards, okay, it's not what we want, but we can pull it back. If it goes forward, now we've got our new benchmark. And I say to people, so what I typically see is people spend out on a website, and they don't do that often, maybe every 2 to 3 years. So, and some a lot longer than that, but let's say it's 2 to 3 years. You have a new website built, you've put all of your thinking in, you've learned so much since last time, you get this new website built, and because it's current, it's the best website you've ever had, and brilliant. Now all I need to do is make sure I get people to it. So I'm going to get a search engine agency in. I'm going to get some AdWords. I'm going to boost something on Facebook that links back to it. All of these different techniques. But we forget the website. The number one thing that's going to convert most of your visits, awareness, all those things into paying customers, we got it right first time round. Wow. That's really impressive. Because when was the last time you did something else and you got it absolutely right first time round? I don't. And I've been doing this stuff a long time. So what I do know is at the time that I built it, it had all of my best thinking at that point in time. But I also know my best thinking isn't with me today, because it's going to use everything I know up to today plus what I learn tomorrow and the day after. So my best thinking is always going to be based on my experiences to date. And that might be because I've not learned enough so far, but it might also mean because everything's changing all the time. The environment is changing all the time. You know, you go back pre-2005, you would have never considered having a social media budget. So we didn't have it. You know, so everything's changing. So our best thinking can't be the thinking we did last year. That, you know, doesn't make sense. So we have to come up with a process for how we're going to keep improving. And that's all things. That's not just our website, but people tend to focus on improving their search engine optimization or their Facebook ads. And it's because they see it as current money being spent. You know, the website's already done, you know. But so why do people do it? I think data fatigue, in terms of they've got too much data, but also they don't really know what it means, and that's just questions.